Young Turks, drop it. Power panel. J.R. Jackson, Nomi Prince, John Idarola. I'm Cenk Uygur. How you doing, Nomi?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm awesome.
Good.
Okay, so we have tons of exciting news for you guys. We are at the turning point. We will explain a little bit later in the program. What do I mean by that? There is two pieces of news today that I think will begin the final countdown. Tick, 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 tick. So, yes, so you can sing along with me, John. Is it Kavanaugh? No, we have a huge story on Kavanaugh, but that is not it. Is it Michael Cohen flipping even more and cooperating with the prosecutors? Partly, but the biggest story today is Rosenstein. So we're going to get to that in a little bit, and it will likely set off the dominoes. So at some point, there's some chance on the show today we will yell "Domino's mother!" No, okay, probably will not do that. Okay, we also have major news about an interesting thing related to the Young Turks. I'm going to do that in a second. Hold. All right. So first, about today's proceedings. Not only are we doing the show 6 to 8 p.m. as we always do, of course, as you know, but John is going to do double duty today. He's going to host the first hour, then he's going to run over and for the members host the Beto O'Rourke Ted Cruz debate. So that is happening tonight. It's at 7 o'clock. That's only for the members, live play-by-play coverage with John and Brooke Thomas, okay? You guys are gonna love that. Now here's the thing, you're thinking, but wait a minute, you guys are also on air. What am I supposed to watch? Well, don't worry.
That's obvious.
Okay, I see you. Okay, you're members, so you can watch either one live and the other one later, because obviously members not only get it live, but they get it afterwards as well. So tyt.com/join to become a member and to get that. And I want to do a special thank you and a shout out to dallasnews.com, NBC5 in Dallas for sharing their live stream of the debate. They're sharing it with our national audience, and that is greatly, greatly appreciated. So thank you, NBC5 in Dallas. Yes.
Yeah. So you clarify that, but just to be super clear, if you tune into our stream, not only will you have our commentary, but you'll have the actual stream of the debate as it's going on. We will also be taking member comments and questions live during the actual debate analysis. So if you want to interact with myself or with Brooke, you can do that live while we're doing our breakdown.
So that's in about an hour. And so tyt.com/join to become a member. But then once you're a member, you got to go to tyt.com/memberslive. That's how you watch old school when it's live, post game when it's live, and this debate coverage. So Beto versus Beta begins tonight. Okay, fun for everybody. I want to do an ad about that next week. Okay, so now announcement number 2. This is also important for all of you out there, progressives. You need to participate. So Ben & Jerry's has partnered with MoveOn.org. So this is a super fun partnership. They are going to come up with, no, wrong, you are going to come up with 7 new flavors for wonderfully progressive candidates running for Congress. That's why I love Ben & Jerry's, other than the fact that it's delicious. But Ben Cohen is one of the great heroes of not only the progressive movement, but specifically getting money out of politics. He's done some amazing work for that, and Move On, obviously a huge progressive group. So the endorsed candidates include, and you guys have to come up with innovative flavors for them, and there's a contest. I'm going to tell you about the contest in a second, but the candidates are Jess King, she's a Just Democrat out of Pennsylvania. Amar Kampa-Najjar, a Just Democrat that's been on a power panel with us and interviewed many times in Duncan Hunter Jr.'s seat there, and so looking forward to those flavors. Lauren Underwood in Illinois, Aftab Purval in Ohio, J.D. Scholten in Iowa, Stephanie Rose Spalding in Colorado, another Just Democrat, and again, another person who's been on the power panel here earlier, James Thompson from Kansas 4th District. James is awesome and was on Rebel headquarters just earlier this week. So how are you gonna do it? You're going to invent 7 flavors and flavor names. We've already started thinking about them, so I might enter the contest. Okay, John and I are going to get into a beef here over, or an ice cream over who's going to name the flavors better. Anyway,
there's no beef in any of these flavors, just so you know.
But you got to capture the essence of the candidate, obviously. How you enter is go to moveon.org/Ben and Jerry. MoveOn.org/Ben and Jerry. If you're watching this later, as always, we have the links down below in the description box or comment section on YouTube and Facebook. And entries must be received by midnight, basically, on September 28th, 2018. So that's coming up. So put on your thinking hat and get to it. Winners will receive 1 pint of their own custom Ben and Jerry's ice cream. So that's a great, innovative way to help progressives.
Nice.
Thank you, Ben and Jerry's, and Move On. Okay, so here's the exciting news about the Young Turks. Now, look, you know we're home of progressives. You know that you're going to go to tyt.com/join to become a member. You know that activist level members get first dibs on tickets to our own events. Now, but this is not one of our own events, but we would like you to show up because I think you're going to enjoy it. This year at Politicon, I will be debating Tucker Carlson. Damn. So that happened.
Oh my God, they got a photo of him making a different facial expression.
Wow.
No, they just shaded it a little bit on Linux, yeah.
So you're going to go to, in order to get tickets, it's Sunday, October 21st, obviously, as you can see in that graphic. The whole convention is the 20th and 21st. Anna Kasparian will also be there. Hassan Piker is also going to debate Charlie Kirk again. So a lot of the Young Turks crew will be there throughout. Go to politicon.com and then enter the promo code TYT. For the people who use that code, we will be communicating with you guys about what we're going to do that weekend. I'm not saying anything, I'm just saying. Okay, so that ought to be exciting. So make sure you enter the code TYT. Cenk Uygur versus Tucker Carlson. It ought to be interesting. You don't want to miss it.
But it said in conversation.
We are just, that's all we're doing. We're conversating.
Gonna exchange ideas, thoughts and ideas?
Yeah.
No gloves. Gloves off.
The gloves are off.
Yeah.
And I believe the holds have not been barred. They have not been barred. So no holds barred. We'll see how that goes. I will be questioning some of the things he has said. I'm sure he will do likewise. So it'll be an interesting conversation. Okay, looking forward to seeing you guys there. All right, now we got lots of news. Now, like I said, Kavanaugh, Rosenstein, Cohen, huge stories. But yesterday I mentioned to you something that's really important to progressives, and how it got under my skin. It does happen from time to time. So I wanted to make sure that I followed up with you guys, and it is about a topic you are familiar with and probably have similar feelings as I do about the frustration that it causes with the mainstream media. Okay, so CNN has consistently been questioning progressives, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez in particular, about her programs to help American people. That's obviously an outrage. If you do tax cuts for the rich to the tune of trillions of dollars, well, of course we can afford that. Wars for trillions of dollars, well, of course we can afford that. But you want to help somebody get health care in America? How are we going to pay for it? So in fact, let me just show you a couple of quick clips here. We did this earlier with Jake Tapper. Chris Cillizza has done a follow-up that I want to share with you guys and then we'll comment on. But I want to show you the tone of Tapper's questioning and the substance of it as well. So we already shared with you Ocasio-Cortez's responses in an earlier clip. So this is just as a warm-up to Cillizza. Let's remind you Tapper's questions. Let's watch.
According to nonpartisan and left-leaning studies friendly to your cause, including the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities or the Tax Policy Center, the overall price tag is more than $40 trillion in the next decade. You recently said in an interview that increasing taxes on the very wealthy plus an increased corporate tax rate would make $2 trillion over the next 10 years. So where's the other $38 trillion going to come from?
So as we explained to you earlier, that is greatly misleading. First of all, he said from left-leaning think tanks, yes, some of the smaller numbers, the $32 trillion number, which I think is the great majority of the 40 trillion, if I can do my math right, and I'm pretty sure I can, comes from the Koch-funded study at George Washington University, but he made it seem like, oh no, these are all liberal think tanks that are coming out with it. But more important than that, as we've gone now over several times, that $32 trillion number does not exist on its own. That is the cost of healthcare in the country. And so every proposal would counter that. You would take away some percentage of that money. Now, progressives have shown, and we've shown on this program over and over again, even that Koch-funded study shows you if you actually applied Medicare for all, as it currently exists, it would save us $34 trillion. That's the thing that Jake Tapper left out. So that would be a net $2 trillion in savings. And instead of talking about this monstrous $40 trillion number, we'd be talking about obviously a much smaller number, $6 trillion. But even if you thought, hey, you know what, it's not gonna save us $2 trillion, it's gonna cost us $2 trillion. And that's what the conservatives might argue. Well, you're still not talking about $40 trillion, you're talking about $10 trillion at that point. So the whole thing is grossly misleading. And Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, countered by, hey, healthcare, actually, the Medicare for all proposal saves money, a very similar point to the one I'm making right now. But Tapper was not convinced, and at the end of the interview, he ended it this way.
Assuming I'm not going to get an answer for the other $38 trillion.
I'm assuming I'm not going to get an answer for that. Okay, I'm not sure that you wanted that answer, but still, CNN persists. So Chris Cillizza, apparently, progressives' responses to this, I don't know if it got under his skin or they just love this topic so much because they can't wait to show that they're not liberal media by beating up on progressives. And of course, it depends on whether you're right or not. So facts do matter. So let me quote Cillizza here. He said, on Sunday, CNN's Jake Tapper put a very simple question to Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. How are you planning to pay for the many and various expensive programs and plans that you're either proposing or support? The New York soon-to-be Congresswoman didn't have any answers, like none, he said. But wait a minute, Chris, she explained for 3 minutes how Medicare for all would save money. Now, I guess you're hanging your hat on, well, she didn't go through the math that Jake Tapper presented. Let us know it, and we looked into this and we asked CNN about it, and we asked some of the groups that they cited. Does this number exist anywhere else, the $40 trillion number that Tapper asked her about right there? And no, it appears that it's CNN's math. They took a number of studies and put them together. So the reason why that's important is because this is the first time Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez or anyone has ever heard of that number. So you couldn't possibly have prepared ahead of time for this question. So then they say, okay, here's $40 trillion. I put it up in a graphic, which you might or might not be able to see as a guest, and I need you to answer it right away. And she gives the best answer she can. Wait a minute, the $32 trillion number actually is not accurate because Medicare for all would save us money. And they go, she had no answers, like none. That's not true, because you're not paying attention because you don't want to pay attention. Yeah. So he goes on, he says, let's buy into Ocasio-Cortez's case that costs would shrink if the government, rather than the free market, ran things. Pause there to note that apparently she did have an answer, okay, not none. So apparently you acknowledge that. He goes on to say, let's even say that it would have the cost of the programs that she supports making into law. That's still $20 trillion, which has to come from somewhere, right? No, Chris, look, it's incredible how smug they are and how condescending they are when they're preposterously wrong. Why would you have the number? That doesn't make any sense. That's a combination of college for all, Medicare for all, and a number of different programs. It's a weird thing to say, let's have the number. No, if you took out Medicare for all, taking out the $32 trillion, you're having a completely different conversation. And by the way, as Tapper pointed out in the beginning, Ocasio-Cortez has said, if you take away the Trump tax cuts, that's another $2 trillion. If you do the speculation tax, that's another $2 trillion. And so on and on, next thing you know, there's actually very little to make up, if you had to quote unquote make up anything. And I can get to the substance of how they're thinking about it wrong in a second. But their math is preposterously wrong. But yet the condescending attitude of like, you don't have any answers. Whereas we made up a bunch of numbers and then we made up having them. And then we claim that you don't have an answer for things that we made up out of whole cloth. So let me give you the rest and I want everybody to jump in. He goes on to say the truth that Ocasio-Cortez doesn't want to acknowledge is that the only or at least the most likely way that she fills the gap between cost savings and the actual cost of the programs she's proposing is to raise taxes. Yes, on the wealthy, but also, if we're being honest, on more than just the wealthy, raising taxes is never popular. No, correction, Chris. It is actually quite popular among the American people if you actually looked at the polling. But you don't. Instead, you're in groupthink, and in Washington, all my Republican friends told me raising taxes is not popular. All my rich friends told me that raising taxes is not popular. Look at a poll, Chris. It actually is popular. These tax cuts where they cut taxes to the tune of $2 trillion, at one point I think polled at 17%. Have you ever looked at any polling? So I'm sorry if I'm being condescending, but I believe you started it. Okay, Tapper is doing an important, he says, I love this one. Tapper is doing an important public service here, Salissa says. Well, we really appreciate it. He's highlighting the difference between campaigning and governing. The truth is that as a candidate, you can be for almost anything because you don't have any responsibility. You aren't in charge of managing the federal budget or reducing our deficit and debt obligations. Free stuff sounds great, but free stuff is almost never free. Oh, look at the condescension dripping from his mouth.
Market.
Yes.
Talking points.
Yes. Oh, free stuff isn't free unless we're giving it to the rich, and then all of a sudden, trillions of dollars materialize out of nowhere. And he concludes with, as Jake's interview made very, very clear, Ocasio-Cortez isn't there yet. And by the way, that's just a little bit of sexism sprinkled in there, like, oh, Ocasio-Cortez, young woman doesn't understand and ageism perhaps, et cetera, doesn't know how to govern. But the most important thing, if you put the sexism, ageism, et cetera aside, is progressives don't know how to govern. But Chris, Jake, did you guys for 1 second ever consider how we're governing today? And I don't mean just under Donald Trump. I mean under your beloved establishment, under your beloved status quo. It's been an absolute disaster. Epic deficit after deficit under Republicans and Democrats. And the tax cuts and the wars and the spending and all of those things that never got us any of the results that they promised. Do you remember that the Bush administration in congressional hearings said that the Iraq war would cost $1.7 billion? Instead, it cost several $1 trillion. And did you ever ask them, how dare you? You obviously don't know how to govern. Look at these children in the Bush administration. Child Dick Cheney doesn't know how to govern. A foolish John Bolton doesn't understand anything about money. Did you ever put up a graphic and say, John Bolton, where's the money? Where's the money? Where's the trillions of dollars you wasted? No, never, because you assume the status quo is a great thing. Whereas the rest of the country does not. We think the status quo is a disaster.
Well, I mean, I think, look, obviously going back to the skyrocketing cost of the war effort in Iraq and Afghanistan, that's certainly true, but we don't even need to go back that far. I mean, they just passed a defense budget this week, $673 billion. That's never expressed in the same way. What does that actually mean over the course of a decade? Well, we assume if it doesn't go up, and of course it always goes up, that's $6.7 trillion right there. How are we going to afford it? Some of my favorite free stuff is military stuff, but free stuff isn't free, so how are we going to afford that? They would never ask that question of anyone, Democrat or Republican, lib or conservative, because with certain types of programs, the assumption is that the value is there. If they say we need $700 billion in the actual budget, not including continuing expenses and things like Syria, obviously we need that. We need to have military defense budget levels that are similar to under Vietnam, even though we're not in a war or even close to comparable. If they do the tax cuts, the assumption is that the value is there. The Republicans always say that if you cut taxes, that will actually generate more government revenue. So they just assume that that is the case. I didn't hear him going through that list of the programs under the DSA, as he was labeling it, and talking about all the benefits of that. If you cut these student loans, what do you think happens to the money that the people would have been spending on their loans? They'll be spending it on other things, which not only stimulates the economy, but also produces more government revenue. We know that on the opposite way, when you cut people's taxes, people who are already making millions or potentially more each year, they're not then plowing that saved money back into Starbucks and buying cars. They're generally putting the money offshore. So they've got it exactly twisted. Jake Tapper could take that same sort of condescending attitude and make a great career out of applying that same sort of rigorous standard, hopefully attached to the facts, to every politician that comes before him. But he, of course, will not do that. He will do that with libs and probably just young Latina female libs like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. He will never take that tone with Steve King or anyone like that.
Mick Mulvaney, Paul Ryan, tax cuts, all these things that happen. They'll criticize Donald Trump. They're talking about somebody who's not ready for prime time. The guy for the entire election talked about all the promises. You can make promises when you're a lib. He brought up, of course, along with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, he also brought up Andrew Gillum. Just cites that name in there too, because all these guys who are new to the scene, at least in your mind, it's not like he hasn't been doing anything in Tallahassee for all these years. It's just that, you just heard their name nationally, means they don't know what they're doing. Of course, yes, there's criticism for Donald Trump for his craziness, his over-the-top rhetoric and the way he talks, and the response is always, but he's connecting with the people. It's okay to connect with the people in the middle of the country that you're saying are the heartland of the country, but not for the people who, she's in New York, somebody's in California. All those crazy libs, all they want is handouts. When you see a rich person getting handouts, which they did, and then it all gets siphoned out, we had tariff fights where people are losing jobs. I remember Trump was promising carrier jobs. Harley Davidson's losing. He doesn't know how these things work. They'll point out that that's happening, but they then won't say, and why should we trust him with anything else? They'll just say, hey, he went crazy with that. The next step is, the next thing he says is gonna screw you over too. They'll say that here because I'm telling you, there's something deep down, and it happens with liberals, and Jake Tapper's pretty good on a lot of socially progressive things, I think, from what I've seen. But there's still something inside, even from a lot of liberals, that they see a young woman, a young minority of either gender, and they'll go, I can't see her making legislation that I have to follow. It just doesn't feel good to them. There's still something in the pit of some people's stomachs. They don't like seeing that face do something for the country that they have to then follow.
There might be a thing on women in math too. I mean, I have a degree in math. I've got a graduate degree in statistics. I want to talk a little bit about some of the things you mentioned about how we can dig into what Jake Tapper didn't do and think about how this really benefits the economy, whatever the cost is, because a cost is also a reallocation. That's what happened when, for example, the Fed created out of nowhere $4.5 trillion to give to the US banking system, to allow them to be prosperous. Instead of, say, taking a third of that, 1.4 trillion, which is a correct number on Tapper's list, and using it to diffuse the student debt so that when students actually graduate, they can go ahead and pay for things and not have to pay for all their debt. Similar with healthcare. Right now, and that's, I think, where this number came from, we pay, as Americans, $3.4 trillion a year in healthcare. So what that basic study that Tapper chose to use in that interview said, okay, well, 10 times that's 34 trillion, so that's the number, which has nothing to do with anything. First of all, that is a number that includes increases in hospital costs, increases in premiums. It doesn't look at, more importantly, the deflection of any money, whatever the right number is, from paying premiums and paying additional health care and paying from other things that could go into the economy into preserving one's life or one's health. For example, right now, the average family in the United States pays about $8,000 a year in healthcare costs, $5,000 sometimes per individual. If you told everyone you're getting a $5,000 or $8,000 tax cut, in other words, we are reappropriating that money in order for you to actually use that in your pockets so that you can put that into the economy, that looks like a really great gain. And that is a much smaller gain than the $1.5 trillion of tax cuts that went to corporations who only pay for 9% of the federal budget. So all of how we should be looking at the essence of what Alexandria said and what Bernie Sanders says and what progressives say, which is that we need to choose how we grow our economy. Do we grow our economy by funding stuff that doesn't go into the economy but makes GDP look better? Or do we fund the economy by taking things into the economy that can allow its citizens to be healthier and citizens to be more productive economically and raise GDP? Nowhere in any of the conversations that attack what progressives want to do with their spending indicates the increase that happens on the other side of reallocating funds away from helping those that don't need it and reattributing that to people who can use it into the real economy, whether that is after school, whether that is instead of healthcare costs, whether that's to grow businesses, whatever that might be. Raise GDP, actually inflate the economy so that as a country, we're not paying 17% of GDP in healthcare costs versus 9% in almost every other developed country, almost more than, basically double. But we're actually increasing GDP and reducing healthcare costs so that we are healthier as a nation and for people.
So I want to make one final comment about their view of the status quo. And look, I agree with JR that they're probably socially liberal. And I've credited Jake Tapper in the past for some good segments, and we try to be fair here. And I'll try even more here. Look, I think you guys might make some good points, and I mentioned it too about, is it their age? Is it that they're new onto the scene, et cetera? I think it's mainly this is an ironic way of being fair to them, but their disdain for progressives in general, because they have showed the same disdain to Bernie Sanders. And he's in obviously a different category. And so, but in their worldview, these guys are all outsiders and don't know how to govern. They've thought of Bernie Sanders that way for the last 40 years. To them, he seems like a radical for proposing things that in almost every issue, about 60% or higher of Americans agree with. It is not a radical position. Again, I asked you to look at the polling. I asked you that from the outside because you almost never invite us on the inside. So sometimes you'll talk to Bernie Sanders. You did a 3-minute segment with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and then you follow up with, like, progressives can never answer the questions. That's because you don't ask them. You ambushed her with a made-up number and then never followed up with any other progressive other than to keep pounding that they can't answer it, when you don't actually have them on air. Look at the answer Nomi just gave. She's a former managing director of Goldman Sachs, has written a number of best-selling books about these issues. I think there's plenty of progressives to choose from, but somehow CNN never gets them on air. There's wall-to-wall Trump people, there's wall-to-wall Clinton people, but when it comes to progressives, what do they know? Here, ambush them for 3 minutes and then make fun of them for a week afterwards, and don't let them defend themselves. And maybe look, again, I guess I'm gonna sound a little condescending here, but two can play at this game. Maybe they're afraid of the answer. That if we came out there and we made these points, they'd be like, whoa, that's rude. We don't talk about that on air. So for example, JR alluded to, with progressives, they're always saying, oh, you want free stuff, you want free stuff. That's a Republican talking point. Oh, welfare, the welfare queens want stuff. But hey, how come you guys almost never talk about corporate welfare? I mean, an amazing study between 2010 and 2015, the 200 top companies who gave money to politicians gave an astounding $5.8 billion. But you know what they received in return? $4.4 trillion in subsidies. Where's your graphic about that? Oh, right, you're a multi-billion-dollar corporation. So maybe that's what makes you uncomfortable. And a lot of those people advertise on your air, let's keep it real. And maybe that's why you don't want progressives on air. But the reality is that if there is welfare in this country, people who want free stuff, it's corporate welfare. And they've robbed us to the tune of trillions of dollars. So you'll excuse us that when someone proposes to spend money on the American people, that we get excited by that. Because for the first time, it would be our representatives representing us rather than their corporate donors. Okay, look, I can go on and the whole point about cops, but we gotta go because we got a lot of different stories for you guys. We gotta take a quick break here. Then some of the most important things, I believe the dominoes are about to begin with Rosenstein and Cohen, so we'll come back and do that.
Hey guys, it's Steph with the Young Turks, and I am here at the Las Vegas Convention Center where Donald Trump is about to take the stage for a Make America Great Again rally. The only plausible explanation that I could possibly come up with for why someone would come to a Donald Trump rally is because they don't actually see the same president that I'm seeing. We're comparing two completely different people. The question that I'm here to find the answer to is, where do you get your news?
Yes, well, I'm a Fox News watcher, and Sean Hannity's going to be here today, and I figure that's a twofer. I love Sean Hannity.
I mainly get my news from my mom, and then I kind of research it on my own and get my own opinions, and I just think like the media puts out what they want everyone to see. They don't really put out the truth.
I try and read CNN and then read Fox and then try and figure out my own middle ground.
Mostly off the web, social media, Fox News. There's a couple of websites that we'll go to that after you watch them for a while, you can tell if they're doing a decent job, a straight job of reporting the news.
You know, I'm a millennial, and I can see in my college classes, if you ask, a majority of the students get their media exclusively from social media, like Twitter.
Drudge, InfoWars, that type of thing.
I read The Guardian. If I want something to the left, I check Fox, and I've got Drudge Report and Breitbart.
So what are your thoughts about this sort of fake news narrative?
I think we do have a biased media in America. I think CNN and some of these other news outlets are fake news.
MSNBC, CNN, ABC, NBC, CBS.
So you think
New York Times and the Washington Post.
Because one goes for the left and one goes for the right. I don't think either one of them tell the whole truth. I mean, I think when the Times went for Hillary, like, you have a major news corporation supporting a candidate. How am I supposed to believe that you're going to give me the independent, the real news when you're not going to turn it to support your candidate when you clearly come out to support somebody?
I always used to watch CNN, thought that was the real news. And it's not the real news because they don't tell you anything.
For the most part, I don't believe much of what I hear in the mainstream media. I go check online, see what they're saying. Normally they're close, but they're way off.
I think with Fox, you get a fair balance. I think they do have people from the left on there as well as the right. So I think Fox is fair and balanced.
When there are privately owned media organizations like CNN, like MSNBC, ABC, NBC, you know, and they're privately owned companies, if the person who owns that company doesn't have the same political view as you, then why would they publish something that goes toward your candidate's favor?
It's not that they might twist the truth. They don't even let the truth out. It's out of control, ridiculous.
There's no accountability at CNN or anywhere else, but, you know, smaller places like Breitbart, and I just feel like they're a lot more trusted.
If we can find where their sources are at and go back and look at the original, and, you know, that's where you find out that they've cropped videos or taken stories out of context, and I look for that.
We all want the same thing. We want to be free in America, to do what we want, to be left alone.
Where you get your news matters. It affects your perspective, it affects your values, it affects your vote. If you care about the progressive values that TYT brings to the media landscape, if you want to see more progressive change in Washington, then I encourage you to become a member of TYT. Your voice matters. Your vote matters. Help us be the home of progressives and be on the left side of history. Head over to tyt.com/rally to join today.
All right, back on the Young Turks. Too many comments here. I'm going to power through them. Romantic Warrior says, TYT's the bomb. Honored to be a member. Thank you. We appreciate it. TYT.com/join, of course, to become a member. Being Plain Jane says, this is a YouTube super chat, says, yes, you're debating Tucker. This is great. Should be interesting. Dr. Pepper Doom writes it on Twitter using hashtag TYT Live. The right wing better get those thoughts and prayers ready for Tucker Carlson. He's going to need them. We'll see. It'll be fun. Chaos Magician 77 says, just convinced my Trump supporter parents to support Medicare for all. Whoa, nice. I love that one. That's my favorite comment. Gabby Marita says, anyone fixating on the notion that Medicare for all will cost X while deliberately admitting that it will overall save Y is being intentionally dishonest. And that is a fair point. You have to wonder why they're doing that. And Axia 66, and these are now in the member comments, and we prioritize those, of course, for our members. Could the White House have made up and leaked the Rosenstein info so that they could use it to fire him? Trump Jr. didn't waste a second to attack tweet him. So hold, we're getting to that story, and that is an interesting hypothesis. One last thing, poll results from yesterday. We asked you guys if Christine Blasey Ford should testify in the Kavanaugh hearings. And I was very curious to see which way you guys were gonna go. And the poll's still open at tyt.com/poll. 80% said yes. And animate a spirited case against it, and there's good reasons against it, but 80% want her to testify. Okay.
Interesting. I'm gonna have to watch that.
All right, and oh, by the way, I should mention, if they're happening on Monday, we're gonna cover them live on tyt.com/live. That's for everybody, okay? Members, of course, always get all the content afterwards as well if you miss it live. But those are really, really important hearings. So we'll be here at 10 a.m. Eastern if they're on Monday. If they're on a later day, we will cover it on that day. So we will definitely be covering it live. Make sure you tune into TYT. All right.
Yeah, and to be clear, the entire run of the testimony.
The entire day, okay? All right, go ahead, Joe.
Let's talk about this actually. There have been any number of people in both media and politics who have stepped up in the past week or so to launch absolutely horrible and worsening attacks against Christine Blasey Ford for having accused Brett Kavanaugh of sexually assaulting her several decades ago. But up until this morning, Donald Trump had chosen to mostly sit on the sidelines, which is not really, that's not really normal for him, especially considering his own dark past in this area of both harassment and assault, and his steadfast support for any man accused of these things, including Rob Porter and all of that. But as of this morning, he is off the sidelines, he's in the game, and here is how he has decided to weigh in on this topic, saying, Judge Brett Kavanaugh is a fine man with an impeccable reputation who is under assault by radical left-wing politicians who don't want to know the answers. They just want to destroy and delay. Facts don't matter. I go through this with them every single day in DC. The interesting thing to remember about that as we proceed to his other tweets is that he says the other side doesn't want to know the facts, so bear that in mind. Second tweet, I have no doubt that if the attack on Dr. Ford was as bad as she says, charges would have been immediately filed with local law enforcement authorities by either her or her loving parents. I ask that she bring those filings forward so that we can learn date, time, and place. Again, he wants to learn date, time, and place. He wants the facts in that second tweet. But now we get to the third where he says, the radical left lawyers want the FBI to get involved now. Why didn't someone call the FBI 36 years ago? Well, that's the interesting thing. You seem to desperately want to know what was going on, and then you attack them for involving the FBI, an organization whose job is to find out what is going on. I think that we would all like to understand a little bit more about what is going on right now, but also what happened 36 years ago. He seems to have a very weird, tenuous approach to that. That's just one part of it though. Of course, the thrust of his main argument is that her not willing to go forward to the police when it happened as a 17-year-old should really make you question whether she knows what happened, is remembering it wrong, maybe is making up the entire thing. There's shades of a conspiracy in some of those tweets. This has been described, of course, as slut shaming, also advancing long, many times debunked myths about how sexual assault survivors choose to function and whether we should believe them based on the way that they act. As RAINN made clear, an organization that deals with sexual violence, in reality, 7 out of every 10 victims don't report to the police. And they go on to explain that while 7 out of 10 don't report, of those who do, very, very few, a far smaller fraction, get any sort of justice. All of these things are contributing factors to people not wanting to come forward. And I would now add to that list the fact that the President of the United States, possibly the single most powerful person in the world, is coming out and attacking a victim of sexual assault.
Well, this is a president who tends to pay people off not to talk about things that he imagines not to have happened. So it could be that the method in which Kavanaugh could have handled something that may have happened in his mind would have been how he would have handled it.
Yeah.
So that's all convoluted. The reality is, as you said in those stats, not And proportionally, most victims of any kind of assault don't come through. And they don't come through specifically for the reason that they could be shamed, they might not be heard, they are dealing with it in their own personal way. And in her case, that's what she was doing for all that time. It wasn't like she wasn't potentially stressed, or that she didn't go to therapy, or she didn't have all of the activity around around the past and what happened in her mind and in how she developed her life. But that said, the guy who is the president of the United States, and kudos to him for holding it together for 2 days and not going after her for him. Yeah. But that is just another in the litany of shameful ways in which he misbehaves. Because the reality is, his job is to say just part of what you just went over. I want to know what happened. And we should continue to determine what happened, as well as what Kavanaugh's other questioning might amount to by the committee as he goes through his hearing. This is a guy who could possibly or not be taking over a major seat for a long time, possibly more than 36 years in the Supreme Court. That's all he should be doing.
Yeah. So let's note a couple of things for the record here. The FBI would not have been able to investigate that crime 36 years ago. It would be local law enforcement. Trump doesn't know that. On the other hand, what does Trump know? And on the other hand, he said just the other day that destroying the FBI would be one of his crowning achievements of his administration. So, and you have to know, this is an important fact, that only the president can ask the FBI to do a further background check in this case. And so he's saying, well, I mean, if only we could know these facts, this, to John's point. Well, there is one way to know them, if you ask the FBI to look into it. Yeah. But if you don't, then yes, then nothing the rest of us can do about it. And
yeah, he doesn't want to set a precedent where the FBI is looking into credible claims of sexual assault amongst powerful Republicans.
Because hello.
It's a dangerous.
Right.
Yeah, so, doesn't want to dip his toe in that.
Yeah, and we earlier in the week, I'm like, he's showing some degree of restraint. That seems amazing. Well, let's see how long it lasts. But we said it. We said, hey, look, man, you got to call it as it is. That's restraint. He didn't attack her, right? And he said, we just want the facts. Like, somebody gave him that talking point, but he stuck with it.
Yeah.
Okay, it's a really low bar to give Donald Trump a compliment like, hey, good job. You didn't viciously attack someone who alleged an attempted rape. But of course he couldn't hold it. Of course he couldn't.
Couldn't do it.
So today, blah, why didn't she do it? My, the part of the tweets that was most despicable, so questioning whether someone actually went through an experience, because they didn't have they didn't come forward when they were 15. She was scared to death, she said, that her parents would find out that she was drinking at that party and that she got herself in trouble. She's 15 years old at the time, etc. So that's all terrible enough. But did you notice the worst part of it? Or her loving parents comment? In other words, it's her parents' fault for not coming forward. They didn't even know about it. He's such a bad guy. He can't help but viciously attack people that are in any way in his way.
I think that comment actually went to her credibility as someone today as well. Even though, yes, he was attacking her parents for not knowing something they didn't know back then, or not doing something they couldn't know about to do back then. But I just think it was also super condescending. I mean, here is Dr. Ford. Here is someone who's actually come quite a long ways in life, right? And to kind of infantilize that in this tweet, I thought was like an additional extra Trumpian dig.
There's small words. I always look at details, because actually I was waiting for this for days. As you said, he's been holding it in. The only thing of the trifecta of she took too long to come forward, where was the police involved, all this stuff happening. The other part of this that he forgot to go with, which maybe it'll happen tomorrow, is, do you see her face? Do you see her body? Why would Judge Kavanaugh want anything to do with this girl? That's the only thing left in Trump's normal toolbox, is to talk about how she looks and why that's not a thing. Lastly, on that tweet, he goes, if this attack was as bad as she says. So that's kind of admitting that there could have been an attack, and it wasn't that bad.
Yeah.
It was just some, as one of the supporters from the Judicial Watch Network, one of those, it was just some rough horseplay. So it was an attack, but it just wasn't that bad. So she's bringing this up, and all he did was just try to get in her pants.
Yeah.
Oh, that's just all that happened.
Yeah, let me just, my shade of difference on that is he's saying either it wasn't that bad, right? It was just rough horseplay, as the Judicial Crisis Network spokesperson said it, or it was really, or she's making it up, because if it was that bad, obviously you'd go report it to the police, because in his mind, remember, one of the things he's charged with, he was accused of, is while his pregnant wife was upstairs in the middle of an interview, he cornered a reporter, pressed her against the wall, and started fondling her. And you remember from the Access Hollywood tapes, he says, you just grab him by the genitalia. If you're powerful, there's nothing you could do about it. He views that as not bad,
right?
Right? He views like, hey, a stranger in an alleyway, I guess, as that's bad, and obviously you would go to the cops with that. Everything else, you just shut up about. As Prager said, Dennis Prager said earlier in the week, oh, people grab my mom's breasts all the time. They grab my wife's breasts, and they were empowered enough to say, knock it out.
Yeah. So I want to add just one more development today to this, because I think it needs to be acknowledged, and he's gotten into this, many of the other defenders of Kavanaugh have gotten into this. There is no one whose life story and choices and actions and communication are examined with more of a fine-tooth comb than survivors of sexual assault. And God help you if you are not the perfect victim who acts exactly the way they expect based on mythology they've created. If you don't, report it in the right way, at the right time, all of that. So they've been saying this whole time, she waited a really long time. It was a really long time ago. I just don't buy it. There's no evidence. Okay, well, we are finding out more now that we know about this, and reporters can look into it, about what was happening to her and her social group around that time. So the New York Times talked with an unnamed male friend of hers that said that after the summer of the alleged attack, Ford, then known as Chrissy Blasey, fell off the face of the earth socially. That's a quote. Then says, all I remember, this is the gentleman, all I remember is after my junior year thinking, where is she? She was the sort of person a lot of people paid attention to. She was a leader. She was great. I was like, where did she go? So I don't expect that will actually convince anyone of anything if they already believe that she's a liar. But she is acting and has acted through the course of her life, up to and including her fears about what testifying next week could actually be like. She is acting exactly like the victim of sexual assault. And that behavior can come in many different forms. The idea that we should be picking apart her behavior to say, that's not how I would have acted if I had almost been raped, is utterly absurd, utterly insulting, and also leads to more women not being willing to come forward when they're attacked in similar ways.
So last thing here is Kellyanne Conway was on TV minutes before the tweet and said, there's no reason the president would attack her. What are you doing, Kellyanne? You should know better than that by now. You know that he's gonna have you go say that and then attack her the very next minute. And in this case, it was minutes after she said that on TV, he sent the tweets.
Yeah.
And as we told you earlier in the live show, we will be covering the hearings if she's going to testify. We'll cover all of them at tyt.com/live, and we'll give our analysis on the spot as we cover it live. So don't miss that. And it's our wish, and as our poll showed on tyt.com/poll, 80% of you guys also want her to testify because we want to get at the truth. Okay, we got to take another break here, guys. When we come back, Rosenstein. This one is huge. We'll be right back. Look, we're doing interviews over there, and we've done some amazing ones recently. So now, of course, you know the person most widely considered to be the most progressive senator is Bernie Sanders. Yeah. Why not back him during the 2016 primaries? Why be a Democrat at all?
And we're in the time where you cannot, in good conscience, sit on the sidelines of history in 2017. Right.
Consumer products sold under the Teflon brand are safe. DuPont did, in fact, ask EPA to make those statements, correct?
That's correct.
When I was pregnant with Bucky, I worked for DuPont around Teflon. They tried to blame me. They said it was something that I did. The more they would tell me that, the more suspicious I got.
You did see there was a substantial risk to the women at the DuPont plant.
There was no potential risk to the women. There was a potential risk to the fetus.
It was used in consumer products, manufacturing products, and the applications were endless. These Teflon and Scotchgard chemicals permeated the living world. Today, every baby is born with Teflon chemicals in their blood.
DuPont and another company called 3M had been studying this chemical dating back to the 1950s and 1960s.
Did you work with a lot of other people that have been sick or died early?
Carol Kapliner, Jim Broadwater, Joy Weaver, Steve Bailey, Lona Carr.
They are aware of the risk of the product.
Risk is relative.
If I go out here and sprinkle arsenic around, they'd arrest me for murder.
You've lied, and they're still lying.
Everybody in this area, in one way or another, is connected to DuPont. You go dealing with somebody's livelihood, you're gonna have problems.
There was a discussion about, do we need to come up with something in our production that's not going to cause these problems? They conclude, if we launch something new, it's going to cost us a lot of money. We have to stick with the devil we know.
Was I a guinea pig? What do you think?
They'd rather lose to Republicans than have a progressive win with them. That's how dumb the corporate Democrats are.
It's the Democrats who lull you to sleep, and at the end of the day, they're the ones who push the right-wing agenda.
Whoever wrote that, I'm sure they were typing with one hand and going like this with you. The Democrats are dead. The way you feel right now, that's how a chump feels. Do not freak out.
They did 100 squats a day for 30 days straight. I was like, how hard can that be? That doesn't sound very hard. So I'm gonna try to do this for 30 days and see if there's any difference in my physique.
3 weeks later.
Steve, how is your exercise regimen coming along with your squats?
I did 100, 100, 100. 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0.
You're pacing yourself.
Yeah.
Right.
All right, back on the Young Turks. Paul in the members section says, should Kavanaugh be nominated if he doesn't ask for an FBI investigation? Shouldn't a potential Supreme Court judge want this when ruling on cases? So that's an interesting point, and a very interesting article I read today made a similar point, saying we want someone who is deliberate and deliberative. And so you want someone to say, whoa, hey, let's consider this. You know how they always say, we just want to call balls and strikes, right? So do you want a Supreme Court justice who's like, let's rush to a decision before getting all the information, okay? Look, if I was accused, I would want a further investigation because I didn't do it. But anyway, we've been over that, but thank you for the comment. Last one is YouTube Super Chat. For stability, a representative democracy must provide for the welfare of the people. Authoritarian governments are stabilized by brutality and poverty. The right are not in a legitimate debate. They have a goal. So, and it is interesting when cable news hosts question when you are looking for the welfare of the people, but not others. Okay.
That reference to the different debating styles, something you should keep in mind as you tangle with Tucker Carlson.
Right.
Indeed.
There aren't necessarily the same goals.
Speaking of debates, in about 8 minutes, Beto versus Beto begins. Beto O'Rourke versus Ted Cruz. John's gonna stay with us because this story's probably gonna take a little bit longer, but the debate will start and then John and Burke will start the analysis of it. Members, you can go either place, tyt.com/join to become a member, and then if you're a member, tyt.com/memberslive to watch it live. And you don't have to watch it live, you can watch it later as well. Okay, members get all the programming anytime they want. All right, John, let's do the most important story.
Okay, let's do it. Dramatic news for a number of different reasons. Different reasons for different groups, I think you'll come to see. The Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein apparently suggested last year that he could wear a wire to secretly record the president, and at least once, if not more than once, suggested the possibility of deploying the 25th Amendment to remove Donald Trump prematurely from office. We're gonna talk about the implications of that, but you should understand going into it that Rod Rosenstein disputes the New York Times' reporting, saying that the story is inaccurate and factually incorrect. He says, I will not further comment on a story based on anonymous sources who are obviously biased against the department and are advancing their own personal agenda. But let me be clear about this, based on my personal dealings with the president, there's no basis to invoke the 25th Amendment, which is one stance on that. Now, what's interesting about this is this information has now come out. There are multiple sources for this information. Who would have actually leaked this? Who benefits from this information getting out? Now, you might say, well, if there was discussion about removing Donald Trump from office by people like Rod Rosenstein, that is concerning. So perhaps an enemy of the president might have leaked this to cause some sort of scandal surrounding his presidency. However, there are many people, big allies of Donald Trump, that would love to get Rod Rosenstein out of office. And Donald Trump values loyalty above all else. And so if this information comes out and Rod Rosenstein is not capable of reassuring Donald Trump that it's not true, it could lead to him being fired, someone else being put into his position who could theoretically end the Mueller investigation. And we actually do have some information we can get to in a little bit about if Rod Rosenstein was removed, who would then be in charge of the investigation, which is also interesting.
So having looked at the report, my assessment is that it is clearly allies of the president who have leaked this, and I believe that the president will fire Rosenstein imminently. I would be really surprised if he made it past the weekend. This president is not known for restraint, and he was looking for an excuse to fire Rosenstein anyway, because he had appointed Robert Mueller, the special counsel, and if he replaces Rosenstein with someone who is personally loyal to him and makes clear that he's personally loyal to him, that person could fire Mueller. They needed an excuse. This will probably serve plenty well enough for their purposes. Now, this is important. It doesn't mean that the story isn't true. The story might be true anyway, and then they use it as a reason to fire Rosenstein. Now it is unnamed sources. I do question their motives, but overall, I was left with the impression that the story is true. So I'm curious what you guys think about that.
Yeah, I think reading some of that as well, it does appear that there is truth to it. We don't know for sure, but it does seem like that. And it's interesting the level to which either his allies or the president has sunk, and again, low bar, to try and remove an investigation or a pillar of an investigation or someone related to Mueller out of his way. And I really think that the timing of this is particularly interesting. There's two things going on. Of course, we're moving into the election. That always changes the timing of everything. That helps his base like him better and all of that, and therefore other Republicans he might endorse. But also it's in the wake of what's been going on in terms of the discoveries from tax implications on Cohen, on Manafort, and so forth. And it's on, I think, the back of Mueller getting closer and closer, not just to what may or may not have happened regarding Russia, but what may or may not be going on in the Trump organization itself. And so I think he even has a double reason to try and shut things down, or his allies do, to try and shut things down to keep him where he is. It's not just that investigation. I think now we're looking at shutting down a lot of investigation around that into his own finances, which hopefully we will get to know much more about someday.
I guess the hard part is, so the refusals or the inaccuracy and factually incorrect talk about it. Someone has to be lying every time there's someone that's lying, because everyone says they dispute the validity of such statements and from this particular place. So while on one side there's that, he's trying to save his position. Maybe he's one of the guys who wants to get to the bottom of this. We can assume that that's a thing since he's part of the head of it. So he has to somehow deny all of it. You can't come out and say, yeah, sure, I totally said that, man. This guy is out of his mind. We got to do somebody. You can't say that. So someone is lying on some point. But Jake, to your point about whether or not someone wants to come out and do something to get him out of there, whether it's not true or not, Trump has to believe that this, which was it? Was it Washington Post, New York Times?
New York Times.
Yeah.
He has to believe the New York Times.
That's a great point.
He continues to not believe any of these newspapers, but he has to believe one of them,
And now,
which he has before. He's quoted the New York Times about things that help him carry his point along. But then when it's something that's detrimental to what he wants to do, it's like, whatever.
Plus, it's anonymous sources, which we know he hates.
So I thought this was the failing New York Times. I'm sure that Donald Trump wouldn't trust what the fake news media is saying about his own deputy attorney general, even if it suits his purposes, would he?
Yeah.
Of course he's going to trust the anonymous sources in the New York Times when it suits him.
So clearly the situation is far too straightforward, so let me throw a couple complications your way, a few curves. So he says that it's factually inaccurate. He doesn't necessarily say that the exact quotes that are attributed to him are not true. And the interesting thing about that is that you can say something but mean one of many things depending on how you say it. And so one added complication is that one of the sources says that he did say those things about wearing a wire, but he was speaking sarcastically, which if you report that to the New York Times, not saying that it was sarcastic, implying that he meant it, then that maybe goes to the possibility that it was enemies or supporters of Donald Trump that would have leaked this. What's interesting though is that while he claims that there's no basis to invoke the 25th Amendment, you have things like a memo from FBI lawyer Lisa Page, who we've heard a lot about. She did a contemporaneous note-taking of that meeting, and there were no references to the 25th Amendment in her notes. Seems like the sort of thing that you would probably take note of, since it's such a drastic action. But then other people's notes say that not only did he mention the 25th Amendment, but it wasn't the only time that he mentioned the 25th Amendment. And that specifically, he also said that he might be able to persuade Attorney General Jeff Sessions and John Kelly, then Secretary of Homeland Security, now obviously Chief of Staff, to be involved in it. So this is not, an offhand comment, if there can be one, of the 25th Amendment, but it's one that apparently he had put some thought into how strategically he would proceed.
Yeah, so more nuance here. Andrew Mccabe is a guy that Donald Trump has attacked over and over and now has driven out of the FBI. Mccabe writes notes at the time saying that Rosenstein did talk about wearing a wire. So now, Mccabe also had conflicts with Comey. You know why? Because they're all human beings and they agree and disagree in parts, and there's different things that go into their calculations. Trump, on the other hand, lives in a black and white world and wants his followers to live in that world. In his conspiracy, Mccabe, Rosenstein, and Comey are all working together against him. In the real world, Mccabe says, hey, Rosenstein's talking about wearing a wire with the president. I got to write that down. That doesn't sound good. So that's Mccabe actually, in a sense, helping Trump or making a note that winds up helping Trump. But Trump can't tell the difference, because he's actually did do it. So he's like, I don't know, I hate the FBI. They're all bad at the FBI. Right. When in reality, at different times, Comey, Rosenstein, and Mccabe have supported Trump. In fact, Rosenstein's the guy who fired Comey, or he wrote the memo that was used as justification for firing Comey. And that leads to another important point. The New York Times reporters do not know who wrote the New York Times editorial, the senior administration official that said, yes, we were considering the 25th Amendment. So the op-ed section of the New York Times is keeping that as secret. So the reporters, meanwhile, are looking to uncover the source that the other section of the paper has, right? And that's their job. And so as I read this, I thought, looks like Rosenstein wrote that op-ed.
I was wondering that. Because that's the thing.
Right.
Once the part came when they talked about, and then he asked a couple of the senior administration officials if they would do it. It's like, that's shades of the editorial.
Yes. I think someone in the audience needs to Google Rod Rosenstein Lodestar and see what comes up.
See what words he uses.
Yeah. Ben and I had done a draft and picked the people who might have written the op-ed in an episode of Old School, which you could check out if you're a member at tyt.com/join. Anyway, I'm so mad when I read this that I didn't pick Rosenstein. I was like, And so why? Rosenstein writes a memo saying, hey, Comey didn't treat Hillary Clinton investigation properly. And that's a fair memo, right? But he doesn't know that Trump is going to use it as an excuse to fire Comey. And he actually really likes Comey. Comey was a role model to him. In fact, when he was, according to this new New York Times report, when he was considering who to appoint as special counsel, even though he had helped in essence getting rid of Comey, which he wanted to call Comey and ask him, who should I get as special counsel? Because he looked up to him. So Trump takes the memo that Rosenstein wrote against Comey and goes, thank you very much, that's what I needed. Comey's fired because of Rosenstein. And Rosenstein goes, no, you asked me to write a memo. I wrote a memo. He didn't handle that right. I didn't ask you to fire him. He feels like Trump threw him under a bus and that he's wildly erratic. So that is why, according to these sources, he's going around telling people, does he look as erratic to you as he does to me? Is he the one, am I the one that took the crazy pill here? This guy is acting nuts. And plus, of course, there's something personal there because he threw Rosenstein under the bus. So, and finally, maybe the most important part of this is, I hope the Mueller team is gathering their papers, storing them somewhere, and getting ready to hand it off to people because the dominoes can fall really quickly here. Trump is a ticking time bomb to begin with. He hates Rosenstein for appointing Mueller. Couldn't wait to get rid of him so he could put a lackey in his place. This probably will give him plenty good enough excuse. He'll likely fire Rosenstein. He'll likely put in someone he deeply, deeply trusts in that role. I don't know if it'll be Jared Kushner or Donald Trump Jr. I don't know.
The person who would naturally, the power would fall to right now, everything about his legal philosophy implies that he would end the Mueller investigation.
Yeah, whoever he puts into that place is unlikely to be a professional, more likely to be just an ally of Donald Trump in the world. And that person then would have the power to end the Mueller investigation. So that's why I say this could happen really, really quickly. Mueller better save up every piece of evidence he's got and make sure that he can hand it off to somebody because they might be coming to shut the whole thing down.
And if I could just say, I don't think that it would be wise for anyone who cares about continuing consequences for presidents when they break the law, for you to wait until this happens, the investigation is ended, and then think, well, what could we have done, or what might we do? There are already plans in effect right now. I believe Media Matters has promoted this. If not, you can search Jordan Ull on Twitter. There's already rallies ready to launch when this happens, when he is actually fired. So you don't have to wait and then hope to find out something then. There are already contingencies in effect that you can sign on to get notifications for.
And that also may be after the election. You know, we wake up, other things are going on, and then he uses that moment to get rid of Mueller. The good thing is there are other investigations around him and his companies going on in New York State and at the state level. So it's not going to be over.
There's no way Trump waits till the election. So you just saw what he did with attacking Dr. Blasey. He can't restrain himself. He tick, 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 tick. There's no way he waits to fire Rosenstein all the way to the election, let alone Mueller.
No, not Rosenstein.
Right.
I think Rosenstein's going.
Right. But even with Mueller, I'd be surprised. And by the way, Mueller, let's go, man. You already talked to Michael Cohen. You already talked to Manafort. If you have something, this is not normal times. If you're thinking, oh, well, you don't want to go before an election and the president wouldn't fire me before an election, that would seem too, political. These are not normal times. If you have it, go now, go public now. But we don't know because we're not part of the investigation. And by the way, to be fair to Donald Trump, if he talked to all those people and Donald Trump didn't do anything wrong, people should know that before the election too. Either way, because they say, oh, it might affect the election. Well, it should affect the election. If the president is innocent, people should know that before the election. If he did do something and the entire Republican Party is covering for him, they should also know that before the election. It would be political to keep that secret if you already know it. What is not political is going when you have it, okay? When you would normally announce it, as opposed to waiting for elections. Okay, all right, we gotta go. There's a wonderful power panel. The Ted Cruz, Beto O'Rourke debate has begun.
It's a big one.
I want to thank NBC5 for letting us carry it for our members. TYT.com/join to become a member and watch it. John and Brooke are gonna cover it, and they'll be joining it in progress. But we have another power panel coming up here and the incredibly important Michael Cohen story. We have not done that yet. And then we're gonna have a little bit of fun with outrageous Halloween costumes, etc., to lighten up the weekend as well. So we'll be right back, and thank you all. All right, right back. Well, the Young Turks, the Friday show is gonna be awesome. We're gonna help us over here. Drop it.
We became the first ever daily online web television show.
No, the Constitution is the very core of America. The fact that we don't spy on American citizens, that we get a warrant, that we go to a judge, that we have a procedure, that we have due process, that is America.
On top of it, they go, why don't they just stay at their own schools? You gotta realize something. These schools suck. They want people to pull themselves up by their bootstraps. You ain't got no straps, you ain't got no boots.
He lit these fires in trash bins all around town out of frustration.
99th most viewed channel today on YouTube.
The Shorties Award.
Best web host.
We passed 1 billion views. Voice Award winner, News and Information Channel, The Young Turks. Oh, another Webby.
The Young Turks.
Can I curse? Yeah! For those of you watching on the live stream, yes, we have adopted a pet iguana that showed up at our door.
Haunted version in the dark with our silhouettes.
It's opening up by him.
Now let's get to the best line of the debate. And it was definitely the one against Fox. I never want to see another man's foot ever. They're barefoot on a plane. It's not
I'm gonna build a wall inside of you. I'm gonna put an anchor in you. I'm gonna space.
I told you we were coming.
When you talk about it when it becomes a problem. Our lack of gun control is a problem.
Question is, how do we make sure that we blame the person who is dead? What kind of democracy is that?
We should never forget that the most powerful people in the world exploited the greatest tragedy in American history to go to war in a country that had a lot of oil.
Rolling thunder. That's what this show is.
Now, top. No. 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 I'm just doing what's right.
Yes, go back to that shot.
Mexico's going to pay for the wall.
It's so good.
Very, very big price.
I can't finish it because he's so good.
All right, so right now I'm walking by Tim Robbins. I'm not gonna make a big deal out of it. Just gonna walk by, see if he notices me, see if he recognizes me.
Student activism, community organizing.
It's cool, like Tim, he's acting like he doesn't see me, like he doesn't notice me. It's all right. It's cool. A lot of people are recognizing me. It's okay if Tim Robbins plays it cool. He is playing it cool. I'm gonna walk this way. See, I'll give him a chance to recognize. Let's see if he notices me. Ready? Maybe he didn't notice me because, my head was turned. It's probably because my head was turned. You think it was because my head was turned? I think it was because my head was turned.
I'm back to gaslighting. Did you and I talk about gaslighting on Old School?
Probably.
That boss gaslit all his female employees. People who manipulate others like that make you feel like you're the weirdo. Why won't you punch yourself in the face? What is wrong with you? And you're like, oh my God, I feel so bad. Why didn't I just punch myself in the face and poke my eye out? I'm 47 and I just figured it out like earlier this year.
You figured out somebody was doing it to you or that you were
that it was that it would have been happening my whole life and I didn't realize it.
Right.
All right, back on the Young Turks, whole new power panel. Brett Ehrlich, Ida, and Michaela Watkins for the first time. Michaela, great to see you. So Saturday Night Live, Trophy Wife, Casual on Hulu, and now all of a sudden Catastrophe. And is that about the Donald Trump administration?
Yeah. It used to be about a couple in England, but then they were like, let's make it about what's really going down the tube. Couples are doing fine in London, so.
That's in season 4 on Amazon, right?
That's right.
Okay, great. Mccabe, thank you for joining us. Ida, great to have you back.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so we got super important stories for you guys. I want to do a couple of tweets here, member comments, and we'll check in on the thermometer, which I forgot to check in on earlier. Ted O'rourke says, how much you want to bet they primed this Rosenstein story with the anonymous White House resistor or op-ed to reinforce Trump's justification for firing him? I would bet a lot of money. Okay, Captain Cornball, which is a super fun name, says, I wonder if it might be a mix of truth and lies. The wearing a wire part is plausible, but it would surprise me if the Deputy Attorney General would so openly talk about the 25th Amendment to have multiple sources for the story. Remember, the sources disagree. One of them says that he was joking when he said the wire. The other one says he was serious. And it's not, some say it's the wire, some saying he was just gonna leave his phone on record because they don't check, okay? And on the 25th Amendment, some say he talked about it and some say he didn't. I happen to think he probably did both based on what I read in the story, but that doesn't mean that they shouldn't have had a discussion about the 25th Amendment. They should have, okay? And they still should do that right now. All right, we're doing the membership drive. Let's see where we are on the thermometer, tyt.com/join to become a member. 31,709. We were looking to get to 700 yesterday, and apparently we did. You guys are awesome. Can I see 800 by the end of today? 31,800. Well, we don't know, but we'll try to check in at the end of the show. All right.
No, we'll wait.
Okay, Brett, you're up.
Okay, so Michael Cohen has met with Mueller when it comes to talking to try to, cooperate with the investigation. That was reported yesterday, and it seems like they have absolutely confirmed that this has happened. What is he meeting with Mueller to talk about? Per ABC's discussions, it was discovered that they talked about Russia in terms of Trump's business dealings with Russia, and in addition to that, Trump's potential campaign activities in the lead up to the election, and in addition to that, whether Trump had whether Cohen had spoken with Mueller about the potential of Trump pardoning Cohen. So those are the things. There's a lot that came out as a result of the reports from ABC, including whether he talked to Felix Sater. They seem to say that he did have conversations in late 2015, including this thing that said, I will get Putin on this program and we will get Donald elected. Seems to be like what Felix Sater wrote, corroborating both the business dealings, the program being a Moscow-based Trump Tower, and getting Donald Trump elected with Russia's help, referring to Vladimir Putin, Putin of Russia. Cohen later emailed a Russian government official hoping to jumpstart the project, which never materialized, but if you're looking for collusion, basically it seems like he has met with Mueller, and what do you think the takeaway is gonna be?
Okay, so a couple of things here, let me just jump in. Felix Sater has a long history with breaking the law, and then, by the way, interestingly, cooperating to get out of those jams with law enforcement in several different countries. And the reason that Michael Cohen might be cooperating with the prosecutors in the first place is because they raided his home, his hotel, and his office, and they got all these emails. So the emails and the documents are probably incredibly incriminating, so including the one that says, I will get Putin on this program and we'll get Donald elected, from a guy who works with the Russians. So in an email to Michael Cohen. So Cohen was already in a world of trouble, and hence the cooperation. Now, today we also found out, according to the New York Times, that there are sources inside the FBI saying that Rod Rosenstein, the Deputy Attorney General, talked about recording the president while he didn't know it to get incriminating information about him, because all he ever says is incriminating information. You can just record him at any given time and you'll get that information, and maybe even invoking the 25th Amendment because he was so mentally unstable. So it might be that Donald Trump's allies leaked that today, given that Michael Cohen, we now find out, has been talking to Mueller, the special counsel, for hours upon hours. It's panic time at the Trump White House. So Michael Cohen was his fixer. First of all, do you have a fixer? I don't have a fixer. Okay.
Yeah, you only have a fixer when you break things.
That's right.
I have a fixer.
Oh, you do?
Oh,
yeah. That's badass.
I mean, I have a manager, and
exactly.
and I'm like, oh, I did a terrible thing today. You must fix it.
Does it ever involve cooperating with the Russians to fix an election?
Potentially, no, it doesn't. And if I'm just saying that sometimes people have, representatives who will go and help. What this guy has is somebody who, before he was actually a president, has somebody who helps him out of very big jams that involve, destroying people's lives. Yeah. And that's weird.
It's not a standard thing.
That's different from my fixer. Mine is like my trailer it has a really weird leaking odor. You need to fix this. Like his is like my is not about his gold toilet.
Yeah, and of course, famously the Stormy Daniels fix and the hush money, et cetera. That's how Cohen began to get in trouble, and now has admitted to doing those crimes, and he's looking to reduce the sentence.
Tax evasion and all these other things.
And then there's also tax evasion. There's also a lot of other things. And Michael Cohen is the guy who would call people and threaten them if they were going to publish something about Donald Trump, if they were going to do anything that would hurt Donald Trump's interests. When your fixer, who has all those documents and who's done all your dirty work for all those years, is cooperating with law enforcement, tick, 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 tick.
TikTok mother effers. But
that's another way of putting it.
What's funny is that I always go to this. I've been following this pastor who's like really going hard on Donald Trump on Twitter. He's a black pastor that's like really explaining who Jesus was, and if Jesus if Jesus would have been born right now, he would have been in a cage because he would have been an immigrant. But he was explaining about character amongst Christians and the people who support Donald Trump, who are always criticizing everybody else's character. But look at the people that he hangs out with. Like this dude is like his Olivia Pope. Right? He's like the scandal. He's the scandal dude. The dude that paid off the women from the adultery. The dude that is trying to guarantee you the payoff for the election. Like this guy. Look at the people that your guy hangs out with, and they always turn. So there's not even honor amongst thieves.
But
and so
they're the best.
They are the best.
He surrounded himself with the best.
Right, a cabinet of.
But now what's weird is all of a sudden, now that they're cooperating with a special counsel, they're the worst people.
Yeah.
It's funny how they turned on a dime like that.
Weird how that is.
There's no honor amongst them. There's no loyalty. And even mobsters have loyalty. You know what I mean? Like they're beneath like organized crime.
But like Michael Cohen seems to be just doing an impression of TV mobsters. That's what I get from him. Like she has the same like jackets that have like if they were a cartoon, the cartoons where like the jacket has a pattern, and when the cartoon moves, the pattern stays in the same place. Like he's that kind of.
But he's a rat though.
But like there's some.
I think he's narrating himself like in Goodfellas, like he's Ray Liotta. And he's like 4 p.m. trying to get a donut, but I can't because the helicopters are so loud.
Yeah, you know what though? That's right. No, but the essence of that is correct. Because in his movie, in his mind, he's now the hero.
Yeah.
And Brett's right too, because so Trump humiliated Michael Cohen over and over again. And mob bosses do this a lot of times. They put people down.
Yep.
But the one thing, and there was a mob expert that explained a couple of weeks ago, it was a really great explanation we shared on the show, that those mob guys that pick people based on their loyalty rather than their merit.
Yep.
Because the main thing that they were worrying about is staying out of jail. That is their number 1 through 10 priority. Hey, did we do that robbery right? Is number 11 priority. Right?
Don't snitch.
If you look at, there was a tweet that Michael Cohen tweeted today that was up for a number of seconds before it was deleted, saying, from Michael Cohen, it said, good for Michael Cohen for providing critical information to the Mueller investigation. It was up 21 seconds, by the way, before someone screen capped it, and then he deleted it. And wouldn't you know, pretty soon his own lawyer Lanny Davis tweeted something that's pretty familiar, which was that exact same text. Good for Michael Cohen in providing critical information. So the Keystone Cops administration makes a giant, it's what they're famous for. He essentially retweeted something. It seemed like it was from a burner account is what it looked like to me, but they're trying to like cover up for it. And what that tweet was trying to do was say, listen, Michael Cohen is cooperating with Mueller without having gotten a deal, so you should trust him. But at the same time, he messes it up so badly that you can't even follow what he's trying to do, which reinforces that point that he's getting the worst people who had been the most loyal, but are also the most stupid.
The dumbest.
Yeah, well, look, there are more Keystone robbers than Keystone cops. And this also happens in mob cases because, yeah, they pick people based on loyalty, but inevitably someone turns on them. Why? Because they're all criminals. So they're like, wait, I'm gonna do all the time? I think you're gonna do all the time.
We're talking about the United States government, though. This is a conversation that we're having right now about the rules of the mob, and we're talking about the president of the United States.
There's like no moral center that's working as a glue to at least hold people together. There's not even that.
And not even like the illusion of one.
No.
Yeah.
Which is kind of almost impressive.
Right.
Well, the guy who wrote the op-ed, who's a senior administration official, this was a little while ago in the New York Times, said he has no guiding principles.
Right.
There's if you try to discern, hey, are you for this policy or against that policy? It doesn't matter. He's going to change his mind because the only thing that he cares about is what's in it for me.
Yeah.
And so look, the chances that he didn't do anything wrong are dwindling, to say the least.
It's just like having a basketball as your, leader. The basketball doesn't care if it's right or wrong. The basketball doesn't care if the players live or die. Basketball doesn't care about anything except just being a basketball. This is a great metaphor, and I really want to run with this for another 22 minutes.
Plus, the basketball is also orange.
It works in so many ways.
Yeah. So look, if Cohen is cooperating and has given hours of testimony to Mueller, then very, very likely he's talking about wrongdoing of the president. And so that is why there was panic at the White House. And then all of a sudden, Rosenstein gets outed. He's the guy who could be replaced, and the guy who replaced him could fire the special counsel, Robert Mueller, who would try to end this investigation because Trump knows better than anyone else. Tick, 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 tick. He knows what Michael Cohen knows, and it ain't pretty. Okay, we got to take a quick break here, guys. We got a lot more stories coming up for you guys, including, the NRA. They're running out of money.
Aww.
Thoughts and prayers.
Yo.
We'll be right back.
I'm Hassan Piker. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram at Hassan D. Piker and on Twitter at Hassan the Hun. And this has been The Breakdown. Was that good, guys?
Okay. Not enough hashtag use. Hashtag abs, hashtag model, hashtag wokebae.
Hashtag one black friend.
I'm thinking more rings.
I got him here.
You need more accessories. Way more accessories.
I don't know where to put it.
Come on, throw these on. Wokebae, not sleepbae.
More sexy too.
When's the last time you posted on Instagram? Too long. Come on, man. No, you need to post at least once an hour. What's the outfit of the day today? Is this what you're going with? No. We need more accessories. We need.
This doesn't have anything to do. It doesn't.
For your gay audience, man.
Yeah, the gays love you, man.
Okay. What else? What else do I need to do?
You haven't appropriated a culture in a week.
We have like a kimono or something.
Damn, that looks good on you, dude.
Perfect. How many rings you got on? Do we have any more?
I got 3 more.
Yeah, can we get more rings on this?
And when you're done, kiss the ring. Look at the camera. Kiss the ring. Maybe like a little wink.
Islam's role in terrorism and all the Huffington Post articles weren't doing well. I wasn't.
How many likes did our last outfit of the day picture have?
Only like 100,000.
So I think that's where your focus needs to be. I hear you on all the blah, blah, blah social issue. We need to focus on followers.
Kids in Yemen.
We don't care if you sleep at night.
Dab, dab.
Okay, I'll dab.
There you go.
More.
Talk about yourself more.
I'm Hassan Piker. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram.
Yeah, be more into it.
Instagram It's important for me. Americans losing access to healthcare coverage.
I hear you. Attack Tommy more.
I've done it so many. She shoots out of her living room now. It's like punching down now.
We're okay with that. But it helps the brand.
We made you. We got you verified.
You're nothing
come
without
on.
us.
So I don't know what else I need to do here.
Dude, just take off that shirt.
That's exactly why Tommy Lauren is stupid. I hate you. I'm Hassan Piker. Follow me on Instagram.
#WokeBay.
#WokeBay. Please follow me.
All right, well, the Young Turks special election day coverage dropping.
An amazing power panel.
Look at this panel. You want to talk about power?
Like a smart Destiny's Child.
We're all too strong. We spun a revolution. Yes, another one. Aren't you excited? Wow. Some of the best writers in the country are right here on this panel, with the obvious exception of John Iadarola.
Let's not so quickly discount Harry Potter fan fiction.
This is the first ever power panel with Donald Trump as president.
We have elected the top Twitter troll in the country.
You know, I can't get over the fact that Donald Trump already has lower numbers than George Bush did after Katrina.
We have to stop pretending that race is not an issue in this country.
Now keep in mind, racism had gone away until Barack Obama brought it back.
That's right. They want to protect life so much that they want to ensure that insurance companies don't cover your maternity care.
Their legislation is always accompanied by some kind of moral judgment, right? This idea that poverty is a choice.
What ran me away from Christianity was judgment and condemnation.
Assaulting peaceful protesters in North Dakota, crazier than bombing Yemen, crazier than bombing Syria so much they ran out of bombs. You mean crazier than funding ISIS and trying to knock off Assad at the same time?
Amazing footage came out today of a 5-year-old child being miraculously pulled from rubble in Aleppo. A miracle and a reminder of the horror of that conflict is still present every single day.
My name is Sophie Tsai, and I'm a video editor and producer at TYT. I edit Facebook Originals, Aggressive Progressives, but I also work on Main Show. I produce The Happy Half Hour. I think my happiest moment is spending time with my coworkers outside of work, hanging out with them and getting to know what they like to do or what movies they like to watch and what hobbies they have. My hobby is playing with my dog and going out to eat. I think that's my favorite thing to do on the weekends.
All right, back on the Young Turks. I just have one note here, and then we got to go. We got a lot of stories for you guys. Ida is going to be at the Improv on Saturday, and then is hosting a march and rally for Puerto Rico on Sunday here in Los Angeles. Bless your heart, Ida. Go to funnyida.com to get more information. Funnyida.com. So check her out at the Improv on Saturday and the march on Sunday.
Thank you.
Yep. All right, go ahead, Brett.
So, it costs a lot of money to detain migrant children. We are just discovering that in this new policy that the Trump administration created, and in so created a pretty costly problem for themselves. It cost $266 million, more than was allocated, so they needed to find it somewhere. And they're taking it from some pretty terrible places to be taking money from. So they're taking $80 million from the other refugee areas that they had it allotted to because they're not taking in as many refugees. So that's $80 million they save by turning people who are fleeing domestic violence and gang activity, they're turning them away at the border. That's saving them money. But here are the other places that they're taking money from in order to pay for building tents to house these kids that they have collected. It includes $16.7 million from Head Start, $5.7 million from the Ryan White HIV/AIDS program, and $13.3 million from the National Cancer Institute. Money is also being diverted from programs dedicated to mental and maternal health, women's shelters, and substance abuse. Well done.
The people who don't matter to those people.
Yeah.
The people of color, because Head Start is for, those programs are for people who are from lower income families, people who are ill. It's just a group of people that they don't care about. And I'm really upset because I just got a rejection letter from one of the those migrant detention centers because I wanted to volunteer with the children, and they told me that I didn't qualify.
Did they give any more explanation as to why?
I'll show you the letter. They sent me this long letter telling me that I did it. And I know people who did not even get screened that went and volunteered with the children. And they actually just walked in.
Oh my goodness.
So 3 things stand out to me here. One is we're gonna take from educating your kids and we're gonna put it into imprisoning kids.
Right.
Okay, so that's pretty stark. Secondly, they talk about, so some of this stuff that his voters would be happy with. I get that. Brett talked about refugees running from violence, but they're also running from ISIS, some of the refugees. But if you ask the guys who voted for Trump, they probably don't mind that too much. Like, I didn't want refugees, take money from there. I don't care who they're running from. I just don't want them here, right? So they're probably on board for that. But some of the other issues, like taking away from mental health funding, I thought whenever there was a shooting, you guys would say it's not the guns, it's mental health. That's the problem. But now you're defunding mental health. And then substance abuse, I thought you said you were gonna solve the opioid problem. I mean, of course, Trump in his usual crazy over-the-top statement said he was just gonna solve it. It was gonna be gone. We weren't gonna have an opioid problem anymore. But now here he is taking money away from fixing problems like that to imprison more kids.
And they're being held, it's like, it's this horrible ultimatum because they're saying if Congress doesn't approve this, and I would just love to see Congress being like, where do you plan to pay for these kids that you're imprisoning and holding in detention centers, 12,000 more than you had last year at this time. Like, where do you plan to put them and how do you plan to pay for it? And then the administration saying, just have the and then don't you even think about it. Cancer, can we just take money from cancer and pay for it? And they were just like, okay, fine. And like the fact that that's like, okay, fine. And I was just gonna say, the fact that they're holding Congress sort of with this hostage with this ultimatum saying, if you don't give us these funds, then we are going to feed them plastic boxes and let them sleep on nails. That's basically what they're saying. That we're going to deprive them even more, and it's just.
Well, like the cancer is particularly from like a thematic approach. It is a particularly ironic thing to take money from because cancer is a problem that it takes money and resources to solve. Right. The solution to this problem just takes not having this policy. Like that's it. Totally. What they have done in addition to the original policy that everyone knows about is they've also changed the means by which people can come and say, I'm a sponsor of this child. I know you separated the family and I know that you're just holding them indefinitely, but they changed the policy. So they're fingerprinting everyone that comes to claim that they have a relationship with the kid. And that's scaring people away from taking this child off of the premises, even if they're a family member or whatnot. And even those who are family members and are documented correctly are afraid because also the administration has been imprisoning people or taking away visas from people who already have visas and those visas are genuine. It's not fair, and they could solve the problem so quickly, and they choose not to. Instead, they'd rather take money from the Ryan White AIDS Foundation, which Ryan White is a kid who died from AIDS, and they set up this foundation, and they're just taking money from it.
So let me build on what Brett was saying and give you guys some numbers. In May of 2017, so Trump is now in office and is beginning these programs, there was 2,400 kids in federal custody that were immigrant kids, 2,400. Now, there are 13,312. So this is unprecedented. These are not normal times. It's that we don't normally have, we normally have 11 or 12,000 and Trump's got 13,000. No, we had 2,400. Now we have 13,000. And why is that? It's because of two reasons. One, they separated some of the kids from the parents, as we all know, and they lost some of the parents. Yep. The kids we have, but they deported some of the parents and they don't know where they are. So I don't know what we're ever gonna do with those kids, but they remain in detention centers.
It's like if you pitch that movie, it'd be like The Hunger Games meets The Handmaid's Tale. Like, this is what makes me always call into question all of the women who voted for Donald Trump. The programs that are being cut are directly targeting women and children. So all of those women who felt justified in voting for Donald Trump and putting him into office, And this administration has directly attacked women in so many levels. That's why they're trying to get this guy approved for the Supreme Court, because they're coming for us. They're gunning for us. I just want to know where these women are now that really, really felt justified in putting this man in office. Like this is disgusting. And let's not talk about these centers, all this money that's going into them, and you still got babies dying from getting sick from being in these centers. Like, these are human beings that we're talking about.
That there's like Border Patrol officers and people in these centers who are abusing. Who there's a guy who's like a serial killer, is just Border Patrol. Where's the outrage there? But that's okay. Some of these women, to your point, Ida, not all the women are have a sense of duty to others. There some of the women are the Aunt Lydias, and all too happy to continue this policy, which is violent and horrific to women and children.
Yeah, now let's also be mindful that Donald Trump's approval rating is 36%. So some of those women have left the building, and partly because they didn't know. And you could say, look, how could you not know? You saw the Access Hollywood tapes. You know what the Republicans have been in favor of for decades and decades. But there are really low information voters. Most people will never find out about this news story. I mean, we're covering it here, but cable news is nonstop to tweet this and to tweet that, and those are relevant, and we cover those too. But you should also cover these stories. What percentage of Trump female voters are going to know they took money away from cancer patients and AIDS and women's shelters, et cetera, to give it to detain more kids? My guess is very few percentage of them are going to know that, and they should, because this is what they're doing in your name. I mean, this is comic book evil character. I mean, if you put it in a movie, you'd say, it's over the top.
Absolutely.
I mean, really, you're gonna have the bad guy take money away from cancer and Ryan White AIDS and mental health and women and all of this to imprison kids? Come on, that's way too over the top.
These have always been his hit list. He has never shown respect to people with disabilities, people who have drug dependency, people who have are veterans, people who have immigrants, people of color, to women. I mean, people who are sick and not the hardiest. I mean, it kind of...
He knocked all of them out the box. Yeah. I just want the people who support him and the women who still support him, can you tweet me what your deal breaker is? What's
that's interesting.
You know what I mean? What's the cutoff for you? At what point do you say, oh, no, I can't support this anymore? Please tweet me.
It just seems like this list is stuff that every reasonable person would be like, we can't take it from AIDS, can't take it from cancer, can't take it from women, like women's maternal health. They're taking, in Tornillo alone, in one facility, they had 400 beds. This money is going to create 3,400 more beds.
In a tent.
Yeah, in a prison tent, which by the way is super expensive and costs all of us taxpayers a lot of money too. If you're a conservative, you should care about that. But I like the project Ida just started, okay? Hashtag bottom barrel, okay? Or barrel bottom, let's go with barrel bottom, because we're trying to find the bottom of the barrel.
Absolutely.
What gets you good? Okay, now that's too much, okay?
Right.
So hashtag barrel bottom to figure out what would cause a Trump voter to finally say enough.
Yep.
Speaking of the bottom of the barrel, here's someone who lives near it. Cody Wilson is the guy who had that company that put up the plans for how to 3D print your own guns. He, in addition to that, recently had been issued an arrest warrant to arrest him for paying for sex. This is his wanted poster from the US Marshal for paying for sex with a minor that he met on a website called sugardaddymeat.com. According to the report, Wilson, who's 30, has been charged with sexual assault. He's accused of having sex with a 16-year-old girl on August 15th and paying her $500. Here's the website they met on, sugardaddymeat.com. He goes by the name, I have it here, Sanjuro, which is a reference to a Kurosawa film. So he's cultured.
Well,
it turns
on
out,
the upside,
he did not come back. They issued the arrest warrant, and he was away in Taiwan on a business trip. He apparently was tipped off. He did not make his return flight, but authorities in Taiwan have arrested him and canceled his visa, and he awaits extradition, even though we don't have a treaty with Taiwan.
A crazed right winger who sleeps with underage girls. No.
I know.
Right? No, really? Wow. I mean, isn't this amazing that it's become almost non-news?
It's a theme.
Yeah. And now, to me, the most relevant part of this is the guy who went around saying, "Oh, we got to be able to print our own guns because we don't want law enforcement knowing that we have guns." And I'm worried about the jackbooted thugs of the government who would come and maybe imprison us for what we wondered. And perhaps we now have our answer. And luckily, when he was arrested, he apparently did not have any of his guns on him, because this is the guy who kept talking about. And a lot of these guys, they're like, "Oh, we need it against the government." What does that mean? Why do you need it against the government? The tyranny of the government, tyranny of doing what? Preventing you from having sex with underage girls?
And why are you worried? Because it's the children that are in the jail for this government. So you're fine.
What I want to know is these people with these guns, right, that are going to take on the government. Like, I'm like, do you really think you're going to beat the National Guard with your little, no matter how many guns
the
you
truth
got?
is, yes, they do. They do. They say, listen, we're going to have a lot of them. How many National Guards people are there?
Yeah.
I mean, I am not even kidding. I've heard this from people who say it out loud. And they're going to have their, I forget what the name of it is. He has a website that he puts his 3D plans on, and it now has a message saying that you can't fight for us. This is the same company that the Obama administration kind of went after, and then the Trump administration settled for $40,000, so paid him $40,000.
He spent 500 of it, just wasted
to have sex with a baby.
Apparently,
it is government money.
They took an elevate, according to Ars Technica, who has the actual arrest warrant and statement / affidavit. According to the girl, she and Wilson took an elevator to the 7th floor where they entered room 718. This is corroborated by video surveillance equipment. He paid her with 5 $100 bills, and police say Wilson next drove the 33 miles south and dropped her off at a Whataburger.
And you know what, on a more serious note, with this attitude that they have towards young women, the president tweeted this ridiculous tweet about Dr. Ford when she was 15. Young women are not a currency for you perverted, disgusting, powerful men. It is just becoming so, it's like we're becoming desensitized to the behaviors towards women that are just completely unacceptable. We're supposed to be moving forward. Technology is at an all-time high, and we are still behaving like we are in the caveman ages when it comes to women. A 15-year-old girl is a child whose pelvic bones are not fully developed. There has to be accountability for this. This attitude that we see sweeping across, these are the people that you have in office. These are the people these are a reflection of the people that you have in office. Milo making a joke about pedophilia. There's this attitude towards young people and young women that's becoming so dangerous to us. And and it's just disgusting.
And it's, I think obviously this has been going on for so long, and in some ways I think we're finally stopping and going, wait, stop commodifying women. Stop commodifying women. And we have right now a government who doesn't really care about women. And so our voices are trying to get out there, obviously. And I love that you said, can we just stop? It's like, it's obviously, this is a power thing, right? This guy doesn't need to have an underage girl for any reason other than like a power dynamic, you know? It's like all women have the parts. So you can find someone who's, wants to have sex with you. You have $40,000 from the government. You are fine.
He should have printed a 3D chick.
But this power, this masculine power thing of, it's really, because it's now in power in our White House, and it has no line that it won't cross. We all saw Trump's tweet today about saying that if this 15-year-old girl was really assaulted, she would have gone to the police. That's a whole other show we could do. But it's just then we don't feel like anybody, including our government, has our back anymore.
So one last thing, Cody Wilson missed his big opportunity because he's among the guys who say, look, we have to have these guns without serial numbers because if the government comes in and we need to fight them in the woods. Well, why'd you run away to a different country, man? You had it. The government was coming for you. You could have grabbed your guns and run into the woods. And it turns, and like he reminds me of Ted Nugent and all those other guys. Oh man, I was gonna do this and I was gonna do that. And then Vietnam came and Ted Nugent crapped his pants, right? So, and I'm glad he didn't. I'm super glad he didn't. I don't want anybody to get hurt. I'm super happy that they arrested him without any violence at all. But lo and behold, when he had his opportunity to go against the government and fight for his rights to have sex with underage girls, he ran.
The only reason he would have ran into the woods was to chase Little Red Riding Hood.
We do need to take a break, by the way.
Yes, okay. All right. That was awesome. Okay, all right. When we come back, NRA bleeding money. That good news when we return.
I just shot a clip. It's time sensitive and it needs to be edited right now.
Did anybody call for an editor? Need this in an hour. But you're an editor too.
Watching all of this very carefully is Simon Wiesenthal.
Nazi hunter Simon Wiesenthal.
38-jarige Simon Wiesenthal.
Leading Nazi hunter in Vienna.
Worldwide as the conscience of the Holocaust.
Criminel de guerre de
Famous
l'Allemagne
and
nazie.
successful Nazi hunter.
He is
in
a
the
self-appointed instrument of world justice.
But he refuses to let his former tormentors live in peace.
Your organization had tracked down some 1,100 Nazis. Do you think it's still really worthwhile pursuing these men who must by now be fairly old?
Any lasting good is going to come out of tracking down these people relentlessly.
Do to people who say, Mr. Wiesenthal, it is time to forget. Stop hunting these former Nazis. Stop torturing yourself and the world and forget.
Enough already. Enough time has gone by. Enough heartache has gone by. There must be a statute of limitations on this.
Sure. No. You must understand, my office is the last office in the world. And because this is the last office, you cannot close the office. I cannot stop.
Hey Dave, as you can probably see, Skype froze. Froze and crashed.
You know, I'm watching that documentary on the Vietnam War, and there was a TV journalist in the middle of some tiny little village in Vietnam doing live TV as the soldiers were burning the Vietnamese huts, and it didn't crash. And that was 1965, and he was in Vietnam.
This is the wildest, craziest motherfucking race I've ever seen. We have 16 Republican candidates. What are we gonna do? Not make brackets? Let us whisper victory. Wait a minute! Oh, my son! Here comes Bernie! Good night and good luck, everybody. These are the two most unpopular candidates we have ever had in our nation's history.
Jesus Christ, there is significant boos every time Hillary Clinton's name is mentioned.
Everyone I know is voting for her out of fear. He was looking at Donald Trump's hair like it was cotton candy.
That's right. Get him out. Get him out.
It's political game. They don't care about lies.
Bow your head. This is what we mean by the establishment press.
Do you trust the establishment media?
Yeah, no.
We have a good time on this show. What else are we gonna watch?
People still don't know what the word feminist actually means. Not even that. People are still angered by the word.
People think feminist is a bad word, but it's not.
There are gradations, there are different waves. The people who are against gender equality love to use like militant feminists as the representatives of all feminists. It's untrue.
I don't know why you'd be threatened by strong women unless you were an incredibly weak man. If you don't have equal rights, or you're not treated the same way, well, wouldn't you be angry? I don't know, I would. Young Turks, super quick, one member comment because it's so important. Brent wrote in, I have HIV and can tell you that Ryan White program is essential. Its main purpose is to pay for medication and treatment which keep viral loads undetectable and helps stop the spread of HIV/AIDS. I don't know any positive people who could afford the over $3,000 a month for daily antivirals by themselves except for Magic Johnson. So that's the program they're cutting. Thank you, and that's why I love doing the show with you guys. That input is great for us to know and for the audience to know. And Brent's a member, thank you. I promised it earlier, so real quick, let's check the thermometer here, and then we got a couple of stories we want to get to. 31,723, so we added about 20 recently. Thank you guys, appreciate it. Let's keep it going over the weekend. TYT.com/join to become a member. All right, go, Brent.
Okay, the NRA is having some financial issues, and our hearts go out to them. The NRA's membership revenue has dropped by over $25 million, according to a report obtained by Open Secrets. The National Rifle Association has lost tens of millions of dollars in membership dues since the 2016 election and has more than $30 million in debt, according to that audit. So there are other indicators that they might be having some financial problems. They also say that one possible indication that the group's finances aren't as robust as they have been in past cycles is that its election spending has slowed down considerably in 2018, a very important year, by the way. The NRA has reported 2.7 million so far this cycle, mostly from its PAC, down from 19.2 million at this point in 2016, a general election year, but at $10.7 million at this point in 2014, which was the last midterm election cycle. So that is quite a gap.
So this is about as good as it gets in terms of news. So, and for a couple of reasons. One, I love that the NRA doesn't have money to threaten people in elections like they used to, or at the scale that they used to. But more important than that is that I like that their members are leaving them, because it's, we kept telling you guys they're mainly representing the gun manufacturers, and so that's the bed that they made for themselves. And if you're wondering part of why they're leaving, even over 90% of NRA members want federal background checks, and it's just very reasonable to say, hey, look, I want my gun. I want to be able to protect my family. I want to be able to hunt, etc. But I don't know why you keep insisting that there shouldn't be background checks on people buying guns, because they might buy guns and come into my house. I don't know why you keep saying that we should be able to have bullets that pierce armor that cops are wearing. I don't know why you keep insisting that we shouldn't have some of the legislation and regulation that would protect serial numbers on the guns so we know who the bad guys are, right? So look, there might be a lot of different reasons why those members are leaving the NRA, but taking positions that extreme to please the gun manufacturers so they can make more and more money giving guns to good guys and bad guys, at some point might cost you some of the good guys.
I mean, you make so many great points with that. The only thing I would argue is that I almost feel like that this isn't good news. This is bad news. And the reason I think it might be bad news is because yesterday, okay, let's just say in theory, and I think this is a pretty proven theory, when there's been a mass shooting in the past, NRA starts to rake it in, right? People go out, gun sales go crazy because they think, oh my God, they're gonna come for my guns. Yesterday, that woman shot up those people in Maryland. I read in the paper that it was the third mass shooting of that day. Yeah. Not of the year, not of the month, of the day. And by the way, there was a fourth one in Syracuse. So my feeling is that people go, oh, they're not gonna come for my guns after this mass shooting because we've just agreed that mass shootings are fine and nothing has changed. And therefore, I'm pretty safe, I'm pretty okay. I don't have to worry.
You know what I was thinking about? The other day someone tweeted if Donald Trump doesn't get reelected, something about how his party has guns, and a bunch of left-wingers and Democrats started tweeting. I don't know what made you think that Democrats don't have guns and that people on the left, and it was
that's true.
It went really, really bananas. And I think that the reason that this polarizes people is because the narrative is always dispersed and to make people who don't have all the information scared. And when you scare people, you can move them, right? And so these people are all being scared into believing that somebody's trying to take their guns away when all we're asking for is reasonable regulations. Nobody's trying to take anybody's guns away. It's just, can this be reasonable? This type of armor you don't need. And I just think about all these numbers. All these numbers will never bring back those babies that were murdered in Connecticut. They're never gonna bring back those Parkland kids. A lot of you people who believe these crazy conspiracies that these people didn't exist, that they're crisis actors. I know someone who knows, who's friends with someone who lost a child in one of these mass shootings. And so we talk about numbers and how, Dana went on, tweeted about the last time they were talking about how they were losing money and they were like, no, we're not. These dollars don't mean anything with regards to the lives that have been lost. And so far, we have lost more lives than anywhere else in the world because we don't want to make rules that make sense.
Well, but now the NRA's in a lot of trouble and they might not be able to push their extreme agenda going forward. One, because they're in massive debt, but two, they're also being investigated for possibly taking money from the Russians. Right. So, but my favorite part, as I said earlier, is that the fact that they're losing members, real Americans going, no, not interested in this extreme agenda anymore. And if you stopped your membership with the NRA, I got great news for you. You can join Young Turks membership at tyt.com/join.
And if you have extra money lying around, our last story of the day is this. Okay, Halloween's around the corner, and you may have seen earlier today there was a certain costume making a lot of news. It is inspired by The Handmaid's Tale, Under His Eye. So here it is, yandy.com, which is the place where you buy this sexy costume, has a sexy Handmaid's Tale costume described as, it said, an upsetting dystopian future has emerged where women no longer have a say. However, we say, be bold and speak your mind in this exclusive brave red maiden costume featuring a red mini dress, a matching cloak and an attached hood, and a white bonnet headpiece, pantyhose not included.
Yeah. I love the voiceover. I think you killed it. I watched The Handmaid's Tale. I watched every episode, and I don't know how anybody would say this is a good idea.
Wait, so you're saying, Ida, if I have this straight, that government-sanctioned rape does not turn you on?
You know what? And I thought about it, and I pondered, because I can be a little freaky, and it doesn't.
And like, let's just say a guy is like, hey, you're into this? You wouldn't be like, yes, it's on. We're good. This is cool. That's what you're saying? Yeah.
Quick update on it. They took it down from the website. Now when you go try to buy it, it gives you a statement saying, Yandy has always stood and will continue to stand at the forefront of encouraging our customers to own your sexy. They go on and essentially say, over the last few hours, it has become obvious that our Yandy Brave Red Maiden costume is being seen as a symbol of women's oppression rather than expression of women's empowerment. This is unfortunate. And then they essentially say, we have taken it down.
Yeah, it was not for women's empowerment. Jessica Valenti wrote, I'm dressing up as existential despair this Halloween. And Kashana wrote, tomorrow, slutty global warming. All right, guys, you guys have been amazing. Michaela, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
FannyIda.com to find her at the Improv and a March for Puerto Rico on Sunday. Thank you, Brett. Check him out on Happy Half Hour. Have a great weekend. We forgot to tell you this. We do this.
Oh.
Bye-bye.